And we are live. Guys, welcome back to another episode of When Two or More with the McCaws. It's been an exciting week. Obviously, last week we kind of talked about happiness and where to find that. But this week we've got a special guest with us. We have Wycombe Wanderers defender, Jason McCarthy. It's going to be fantastic just to get into that. Obviously, some of you will know that I'm incredibly passionate about sports, but also interested in the faith side of those and where those two come together. So there is no one better really than a professional footballer like Jason, who is a fantastic baller. Love what he brings to the. We just had a joke actually about him being a defender, but actually pushing and being part of the goals and being involved after getting an assist very recently. Fantastic. But also, a really incredibly passionate Christian that just has a heart to share the gospel and take every opportunity to do that, and take that mandate very seriously. And I really appreciate that. So without further ado, let's bring Jason in. Jason, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Stuart. Thank you very much for having me. It's a very, very nice welcome.
You like it? I just moved in from our vaccine conversation and in. Mate, just first and foremost, just want to take the time just to honor you. Like what I've seen, you are a passionate evangelist, and God's really like we're going to get into this, of course, but from what I understand, God's really spoken to you, and you've really had a personal experience and encounter that is like no other, really. But I know we can all say that, but I really you've had kind of the encounter moment, you've had transitions through relationships. Just I'm really honored that you are just so willing to say I just want to take every opportunity to share that story. So thank you very much for taking this opportunity.
Nah, you're welcome, Stuart. And um, you know what? I think my heart for to share and to evangelize um is never really left from the moment that I encountered the Lord, because
Mm.
I just couldn't believe when God revealed Himself to me. I just couldn't believe that this was real. That the Creator of the universe, the Creator of everything, and who formed me and wanted me on this earth right now,
Mm.
wants relationship. And ever ever since I knew that and I found that out, I just wanted to tell everyone. I wanted it.
Mm.
It's like just having the best news ever and not sharing it with people around you. It doesn't
Mm.
make sense. So it hasn't stopped since I found out. I've got such a heart to share. I feel great when I share.
Mm.
Um, and Yeah, I just want people to have what God's given me.
That's brilliant, mate. That's fantastic. So let's go back to the start, Jason, because you share such a fire, but you weren't brought up in a Christian home, were you?
No, I wasn't. I I had a really good upbringing. My dad had a really good job. Um, my mum didn't have to work, so um, yeah, I wasn't in a didn't have a upbringing where I necessarily was searching for something better or even a father figure. My dad was I was really close and still am with my dad. My parents were brilliant to me in raising me. We always had what we needed, and they were always willing to traipse me up and down the country to football games and stuff like that. Went to good schools. Um, and yeah, like I said, they did a great job. Um,
Mm.
but there was no element of faith in the family. We'd sometimes have the conversation around the dinner table: do we think God is real, and
Mm.
stuff like that. And I would never. I always remembered I would never say no. I didn't. I would always have um, an openness to it.
Mm.
Um, and I always had a curious mind. Looking back now, when I was a kid, I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to better myself, and um, so I would definitely say that I was open, and I really believe that a lot of the time that that's all that God needs. He
Mm.
needs an open heart. He
Yeah.
needs someone who is open and willing to listen to him. And because, like I said at the start, I believe God wants relationship, and I believe we have an open heart and we're open to that idea. I believe that God's standing at the door. We just need to open that door. And so yeah, no, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So yeah, I had no element of faith in my family. So when I did come to know the Lord, it was an interesting one for them.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Where do you think you got that such openness from? Because not everyone's like that, are they? Are your parents very open to different ideas and understanding on that?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't.
Mm.
I wouldn't say so. I would probably say that my family are quite strong on what they think, and they definitely yeah. I wouldn't say necessarily. I think that God has just placed that in me. I think
Yeah.
we're all very unique and very different. I've got two children. We've raised them. I know they're only very young at the moment, but we've both raised them very, very similarly. And one loves his food, and the other doesn't. Like, and we've done the exact same thing with both children, but one of them won't eat and the other one will.
Yeah.
So I can't really explain that to you, but all I know is that God
Yeah.
put that in me,
Yeah.
and that He given me an open heart, and yeah.
That's fantastic. What was the values that were important to Jason when you were younger? What did you go
That's
for?
Yes, that's a good question. Work hard. I always had that. My mum and dad installed that in me, and like I said, I had a good upbringing, but that didn't mean that I had to work for everything. And my dad wouldn't let me score in the garden if he was in goal. Like, I had to work to score.
Yeah.
And he would often do things like, if you want that new pair of boots, you got to do 500 keepy uppies or 30 keepy uppies with your left foot, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
Amazing.
I think my dad saw in me that,
Mm.
and he pushed it, I think, and it naturally created a hard work.
Yeah.
And I would say also something that was installed in me from young was I liked leading. I liked to lead groups. I would always been captain of my age group at football.
Yeah.
I often quite like the responsibility of leading people or taking hold of a situation. So yeah, I would probably say they're the two standouts.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And are you that father now, Jason?
I would say no. I would say
Okay.
I'm quite different.
Really?
Um, yeah, it's interesting because my dad was actually having this conversation with my dad the other day, and I
Right.
said, um, you know, I thought sometimes my dad probably pushed me too much. Where I remember car journeys home where maybe he'd had a bit of a pop at me,
Right.
and they stuck with me. And I thought,
Mm.
it was always maybe in the case of he thought I wasn't trying hard. It would never be just because of my performance. It'd be maybe because of my attitude. So I
Yeah.
understood it, but I think I wouldn't be as hard as that on my son, and I want maybe do it in a different way.
Mm.
Not to say I wouldn't push
Mm.
my children if I knew that they enjoyed something and they really loved it, and because we're all going to go through dips and times where we don't like that thing as much, we don't like that element of that,
Yeah.
in this sense, football so much, but we have to ride it, and we have to have someone, I guess, at them younger ages guiding us and pushing us in the
Mm.
right direction. But I guess,
Mm.
because I have I have the Lord, and I hope my son and my daughter will grow up, knowing the Lord too, is
Mm.
that maybe our conversations and the way that our outlook will be a little bit different in terms of how we go about that. So yeah.
That's brilliant. I think it's great, when you've got a similar situation to yourself. I have a great mom and dad. I love them dearly, and it very much taught me that I can I can learn something, even if someone does something incredibly bad or in ways I disagree with. I can learn
Yeah,
something from it. I can learn that I didn't like feeling that way, and we can adjust. And I'm not a father yet, but I'm sure you've done the same and gone, okay, what did I like about it? What can I implement? What didn't I like about it? And we still love our parents for that. That's fantastic. So
yeah.
when you were young, how did you were you was your I asked this question to Azazi. I said, was his football talent something that stood out? So was your football talent something that stood out naturally, or did you work for it? I guess from what you've said, that work rate was definitely there. Was that natural ability there as well?
Yeah, I think so. Like, definitely, it was an element of both.
Mm,
I think pretty much any footballer will probably say this.
mm,
Is when I first started kicking the ball, my dad always said he knew that there was something about
okay.
the way I was striking the ball. My dad was a big football fan himself, so
Yeah.
he had a knowledge, so he knew I was half decent. But when I got to academy football, when it started getting like
Mm,
interesting and it started getting a bit more important,
mm,
I quickly knew that all these other players in this age group are just as good as me, technically, if
yeah.
not better.
Yeah.
So I knew at that point that I had to work hard, and that's
Mm,
where my leadership started coming to the fore as well. Where I thought, if I can add that string to my bow, which is something I can completely control, and something that I'm naturally quite good at, then that can be impressive too. So I
yeah.
would definitely say that I had to work really hard to get where I am now.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that element of your dad pushing, you were kind of used to going right competition, as it were, and dig into that.
Yeah, definitely, and
Brilliant.
yeah, that definitely formed that winner in me, and um, yeah, I thank my dad for that. Yeah, a lot.
That's fantastic. It's so interesting how God just puts people in our lives to prepare us for the plans that He has for us, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, hundred
Yeah.
percent. Um, and the journeys we go on, me
Mm,
and my wife had a very different relationship to the one we do now. Like
mm,
in terms of when we first met, and
mm,
um, God knew,
yeah,
God knew that we were going to be right for each other, and that ultimately it would end in salvation. We
yeah,
didn't know that at the time,
yeah,
and like you said, it's true. God places people in our life
yeah.
for His will, and
It's amazing.
sometimes you can only see that with hindsight, can't you?
Exactly, exactly. You must look back at your life and go, these things have just managed to line up, and you'll continue to do that, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, no,
It's
hundred
part
percent.
it's part of testimony. It's such a beautiful thing, isn't it? As in, you can look back and go, yeah, these things have lined up, and I can see that this is God working in my life. Even before I knew it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I
Mm,
guess when we talk through my career and where I've gone, you'll be able to see that in that as well. Like if I didn't have
yeah,
such a bad time there, then I wouldn't have gone there, and then
yeah,
that wouldn't have happened. So yeah,
yeah.
no, definitely.
That's fantastic. So that's a great segue into where did you start club wise, Jason?
So I was born in Southampton,
Okay.
raised in Southampton, and um, I just came through the academy there from the age of 8
Mm,
right the way through. I um, I was captain of the reserve team, and then I made my debut under Ronald Koeman, um,
okay.
which was amazing. And
Mm,
I first started getting a little glimpse of the first team when Mauricio Pochettino was there.
okay.
So I had an amazing schooling straight into the first team. Like I had these two incredible managers, and I learnt so much from them 2, 3 years when I was around the first team.
Mm,
It was awesome. And the year after I made my debut, I then started going the loan route, and I started going on loan.
okay. Okay. So who did you go up? Is there any names, I guess, you went up that we would know that went up through the Southampton academy?
Yeah, so my year group was
Mm.
me, Matt Target, the
Yeah,
Aston Villa left back,
yeah, of course.
and Sam Gallagher, the Blackburn centre forward as well.
Yes,
So
yeah.
us three, I would say, have like we've came through and we're going on
Mm.
to have careers. And
Yeah,
the year above from me
yeah.
was like the golden year. It was
Really.
ridiculous.
Mm.
Yeah, so the year above, so like three coming through in an age group to go on and have careers is pretty good return. But
Yes, yes.
the year above from me was Luke Shaw,
Oh,
James Ward-Prowse, Callum Chambers, Harrison Reed at Fulham. Is incredible, and then you've got
wow.
Jordan Turnbull, who's at Salford City,
Okay.
centre back. Um, Sam McQueen, who's still at Southampton. He's had a few injury problems, so it was crazy. The year above for me was
Wow.
ridiculous. Like,
That must have done you guys wonders. Like to that's what you're aiming for. That's where you're going for. I know, obviously, they weren't where they are now then, but
yeah,
the standard, the quality must have just been like, pushing you guys on huge
oh
amount.
yeah,
Mm.
100%, 100%. We knew that these guys were getting offered like 4-year contracts at 12, like, and we were just like, wow, like that's what we want to be doing, and
Yeah, yeah,
we would often play against them and we would get smashed,
yeah,
and like you just saw the standard, like
yeah,
but I was quite like in my age group, me and Matt Target were quite highly rated, so sometimes we would go up and train with them or play with them on a Saturday,
amazing.
and it just gave you such a good idea of
Yeah,
what the standards were like, and I knew just from how the club were with this group of players in particular that um they had a bright future. So you
yeah,
start sort of weighing yourself up against them, and you think, what am I like compared to these
yeah,
guys, and
yeah, yeah.
sort of thing. So yeah,
That's phenomenal, mate. That what an opportunity. I'm a Chelsea fan at heart, and academy is kind of the word on every Chelsea fan's lips at the moment because of what Frank Lampard did and came and left. And so I realise how important that would have been for you. And that it seems to be that kind of first team is the goal, obviously, but that academy a culture is so important in order to prepare for that first team.
yeah,
It's
no, definitely,
fantastic.
it is,
Mm.
definitely.
And was Southampton the goal for you? Do you think?
Yeah, yeah, it
Okay.
was a
Mm.
100%. I wanted to get in the first team. Um,
Mm.
Obviously, like I said, I was born and raised in Southampton,
Yeah.
so I I had a lot of family who were fans, and all my friends at school knew, I was in the academy, and that I made my debut, and I was on the bench a lot that season as well. So yeah, and we won the under 21s cup as well, and I was like
Okay.
captain. There was like a big article how I was like the next one on the conveyor belt,
Mm.
and I saw it and I felt it, and like, I thought I was going to break in, and I thought that I was going to just get in
Mm.
and stay in really in the first team,
Yeah.
but it just didn't quite happen, and
Mm.
I went, like I said, I then went the loan route, and
Yeah.
my
What was?
loans, if I'm
Mm.
being honest, couldn't have gone better, but
Okay.
they ended up often to opting to sell me to a championship club in the end. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, I sort of accepted that towards the end. But before I went on loan, I thought that I was going to stay there, and I thought that I was going to break
Mm.
through.
Yeah. Yeah. So was it a big thing to move when you were moved out on loan? Was back to Southampton always the goal, or does that club become I want to do as best I can here, or a bit of both? In fact,
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, first of all, it's good to
Mm.
mention that at this point I didn't know the Lord, so
Yeah.
I had a lot of pride to
Yeah.
start with when I first went out on loan.
Yeah.
So I think it could have been avoided. So, like I said, when I was about 18, 19, I'd done a full season with the first team. I was on the bench and I made my debut. Pretty much the whole season I was on the bench. So the following year, in my mind, I would need to progress each year.
Yeah.
So I sort of gave the club, in a way, an ultimatum, as if
Right.
to say, am I going to be involved? Am I going to play in the cup games?
Yeah.
Am I going to be training with the first team all the time now? I'm not seen as like a reserve team player stepping up. Am I going to be known as a first team player now? I wanted to see that progression, which when looking back now, it's a bit silly at 19, having made one appearance, giving Southampton Football Club a bit of an
Yeah.
ultimatum. It wasn't, and it wasn't from bad intentions. It was
No.
from me simply wanting to progress and keep
Better
pushing
yourself.
myself
Yeah.
forward. Yeah, exactly. But now looking back, I can see that it maybe could have been taken the wrong way.
Yeah.
Anyway, that I think that sort of pushed the club into a corner. That they said that I was going to stay and be a part of it. I ended up not being, and then I went on loan. And as soon as I ended up opting to go on loan, my initial thoughts were I was nervous. I sort of knew that in football, when you're a young player, when you step out on loan, your first loan has to go well, really. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for you, because the fact that someone's taken a chance on a 19-year-old defender anyway in the Football League, when they've got experienced players who have played 300 or 400 games, they're taking a risk.
Yeah.
Like, if that doesn't go well for the player, who
Yeah.
else is going to take that risk? So I knew
Yes.
that it had to go well,
Okay.
but it couldn't have gone better. My first loan.
Where was that? Which club was it, Jason?
It was at Wycombe, so the club I'm at
Oh,
now.
amazing. Okay. Because you've had
Yeah,
some spells there, haven't you, since?
yeah,
But
I
that was
have.
the first of, yeah.
Yeah. This is my first spell. The same manager. We were in League Two at the time, so
Okay.
the club were in a completely different situation.
Amazing.
But I did really well. I got player of the season. I played like every game. And then the following year, I went to Walsall, which was a league up in League One. I did really well again. I got player of the season. I played every minute. And then I was in the final year of my contract at Southampton. So I was 21 at this point. I'd sort of ticked off League Two, ticked off League One. I
Yeah.
was now stepping. I thought, right, I'm a year left on my contract. I was kind of expecting Southampton to go, right, new deal, on loan in the Championship. Do that, and then you're going to be pretty much ready to go. Um, I knew that I was Championship interest around me, but Southampton decided to cash in, I guess, and it wasn't a lot of money for them, but that was how it went. And to be fair, I remember in the meeting being told by my agent that that was what they wanted to do, and I was okay with it. I still thought when I was on loan all them times, right, the goal is to go back to Southampton and to try and break in.
Yeah.
But my career was taking such a trajectory and path. I thought, well, even if it's not with Southampton, if I keep going how I'm going, then there's no reason why I can't get to the Premier League. So yeah, that was my thought process.
That's incredible. So you're on this trajectory. You've finished. You then. Who did Southampton then sell you on to?
This was Barnsley. So
Barnsley. You move it to Barnsley from there.
yeah,
Incredible. And we're coming to a moment in your career that it all changes, aren't we?
yeah,
And run us through this, because this is. Thank you so much for explaining that context, because it's going to give the listeners how important that moment is, because the wider sense is you're going yes tick, okay, yes tick, but there's a progression, isn't there? Lead us
yeah.
through what happens at Barnsley, Jason.
No, it's good. Yeah, 100%. I was like, in my mind, I thought I was just going one way, and I hadn't. Like I said, I had a good upbringing. I'd had good experiences in football. In terms of rejection, only really Southampton letting me go, but I was even sold for a fee. So I thought, do you know what? It's not a bad thing. My career is going one way, and I hadn't experienced any kind of family loss, anything like this. And it was a big move for me going up north. Like I said, I was close with my family, close with my parents.
Yeah.
At this point, the furthest I'd gone is the Midlands, and I was on loan, so I was coming back and forth quite often
Mm.
to Southampton. But this was a move away. This was a 5 hour trek from Southampton up to Yorkshire,
Mm.
and I within the first month I couldn't believe what had happened. I signed for the club. I was so excited. Couldn't wait to move up north. I was on a good contract. I thought, wow, this is good. This is what we're talking about. Within the first month, I was held at knife point. Um, I was I was assaulted in a nightclub, and my uncle passed away, who I was very, very close with, and my granddad passed away within, I think it was within 3 days. They both passed away.
Yeah.
So like I could I couldn't like wrap my head around everything that was going on. Like I said, I was away from my family. This was my
Mm.
dad's dad and my dad's brother.
Yeah.
Close with my dad, obviously. So I'm seeing my
Yeah.
dad like go through like real hardship. I can't really
Mm.
get back and see him, and I didn't want to tell people about what was going on as well.
Okay.
The not being held at knife point was um, something my teammates did know about because I was with another one of my teammates. So,
Okay.
but I couldn't believe what had happened within the first month, and I very, very quickly realised that um, football was kind of everything I based my happiness off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge lesson to come away from these events. Very, very quite unique lesson to come away from. What was it that kind of, but also it's quite separate, isn't it? As in, these are all events that have happened in your personal life. What was the? Did you just realize that, I guess, the break and the run away to kind of football was where you were getting peace from, or how did that come about? Do you know?
Yeah, so
Mm.
I would say I found it in particular when it got taken away, and
Yeah.
many other things happened in that time when I was at Barnsley, more stuff, and it was just a real tough time off the pitch. And
Mm.
I knew that I just couldn't wait to get into the club, and I didn't really want to be at home. I didn't want to be alone, so I would often just ask people to go for dinner, or um, I just I would stay longer at football than I needed to. I just didn't really
Yeah.
want to be alone. I didn't want to be on my
Yeah.
own with my own thoughts.
Mm.
And I loved the Saturday at 3 o'clock. Like I loved it because it was just or
Yeah.
training. It was just
Yeah.
something where I didn't have to think about what was going on off the pitch.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could just focus on football. So I knew
Mm.
that football was my like real release, and I was
Yeah.
happy in admitting that to people. Like, and
Mm.
when so the inevitable happened in football. Up to now, I hadn't ever been dropped from a team, which is crazy in 2.5 years of football.
It's
I
brilliant,
hadn't
mate.
had I
Mm.
know I was obviously
Mm.
doing something right, but I hadn't
Yeah.
experienced a drop, and
Mm.
it came a bit out of nowhere. We played Sheffield Wednesday away on a Saturday, which was a Yorkshire derby. They were flying at the time. We got a point. We got drew 1-1. I had a
Mm.
fairly solid game, and then the next game, the manager pulled me and just said, "I'm going with someone else tonight. Not going to be in the team." And the team won, I think 4-2. I think it was 4-2 away from home, and then they just kept winning and winning, and I couldn't get back in the team. And then I was in and out of the team, in and out of the team, and then a new manager came in around January time, and just basically told me within the first week I wasn't going to be part of his plans. So my football just went under my
Yeah.
feet
Yeah.
away, and then I felt like I had nothing really, no reason to like I didn't know what was getting me going, what was keeping me going, and I had a friend in the team called George Moncur who was a Christian.
Hmm.
He was going through stuff off the pitch, and he also wasn't playing. But this guy was so happy all the
Mm.
time. Like he was, I always say he was annoyingly happy.
Mm.
Like, and he used to come up to me and share with me. He used to share scripture with me. Always
Mm.
used to say, "I'm praying for you, Jace," and he used to like just tell me that God has a plan for me. And like I admired his peace. I I loved how he carried himself, and he planted a seed within me. I didn't know it at the time, but we became quite close friends, and um, I thought he was a bit strange, if I'm being honest. Like,
Yeah,
but
I can see.
I thought he was probably strange because I couldn't believe how happy he was all the time in his
Mm,
circumstances. It didn't make sense to me.
yeah,
But
because you were in it as well.
uh,
You're in the same circumstances,
yeah,
like dealing with all these things. It sounds like there was a sense of loneliness. I mean, naturally, because you're so far away from your family, it's probably your first sense of like real kind of mental health
yeah,
battle that you're going through,
yeah,
and you've got the guy that sat next to you on the same bus that you're on, finding complete joy and peace in that situation. Flip.
yeah.
Mm,
Exactly.
mm,
That's spot on. And
mm.
um, which obviously I had a bad season at Barnsley in the end, and which led me going back to Wycombe Wanderers. So,
Okay,
so yeah,
that's this life turning moment, isn't it? Like everything that, yeah, I mean, everything that you thought you were was thrown on its head, wasn't it? And
yeah,
so so you've got this friend, obviously George. Did he stay up with Barnsley?
yeah,
Um, yeah, obviously
yeah,
stayed in touch with him because these friends seem to have a hold on our lives, don't they? Just such good people. Yeah.
yeah.
And then you went to Wycombe, and did you take your faith with you? You know, how did that work at Wycombe?
Well, I wouldn't say at this point I even had faith. I would just say
Okay.
that, I was very interested by George and how he carried himself. But when I was at Wycombe, football was going well again. I was back in the team playing. I noticed I still had a bit of a fear lingering in the background. If I come out of the team, how am I going to be, etc.
Yeah.
Um, but I knew that um, football was good again, really.
Mm,
But um, something wasn't right within my mindset. Something had changed through that experience at Barnsley.
yeah.
And I was having lunch one day, and there was a guy called Alex Samuel and another guy called Ben Fremper who were um, across the table from me, and
Mm,
they were talking about Jesus. And I always say the way they were talking about Jesus was like he was in the room, like he was their best friend. Like the way
mm,
they spoke about him was not like I'd heard anyone speak about him before.
wow.
And I was like listening to a conversation over here, but I wasn't really listening. I was listening to them too. I was
Hmm.
hearing them talk, and I was blown away by it. I started asking them questions, started sharing with me their stories and about how God had changed their lives, and
Mm,
both were similar. I hadn't grown up in a Christian home, but just sharing with me how what God had done for them and who God is to them, and I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Like we were talking for a long time, and I just had so many questions,
mm,
and it felt like a really safe space to speak. And Wycombe is an amazing club. You know, it has that element to it. Sometimes in some football clubs, you feel like you can't talk about certain things, whereas Wycombe is amazing. Like some of the conversations that had in the dressing room is just incredible. And
mm.
yeah, so that month, me, Alex, and Ben started meeting up for coffee. I think we went up for coffee every day we possibly could that month. I
Amazing.
had so many questions. I was asking them about prayer, about the Bible, and they were telling me who Jesus was. They were sharing the gospel with me. They were
Mm,
telling me about the good news of Jesus Christ,
mm,
and I was opening my mind up to the fact that this could be real and might be real.
yeah,
But I had an idea of it, and they told me about what it was about, but it needed to become real to me.
yeah,
I needed to encounter him to know
yeah,
that he is real,
yeah.
and I needed. It's all very well and good being told about it, but I needed to know and understand who he is, and that
Mm.
he ultimately wants a relationship with me. So yeah.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And how long did that process kind of go on for? And and also, Wickham's been. I've seen it be recognised for having a faith based kind of culture. Where does that come from? Has that been the start? What's your experience of that?
So yeah. it does have a massive faith-based culture, and that comes from Alex.
Okay.
So Alex came to the club probably 4 or 5 years ago. He's not here anymore, but he it started from him and Ben Fremper. Adebayo Akinfenwa was here already. He's a Christian.
Okay.
Maybe he wasn't as outspoken in his faith as maybe he is now, or is with us now.
Yeah.
And that led, anyway, Alex brought me to the Lord. There was another guy called Cameron Yates who was led to the Lord. And do you know what? God has an amazing way of bringing Christians also to Wycombe
Really?
Football Club. Yeah, and do you know why I say this is such a testimony? Is because our manager and our assistant here do so much character referencing when they buy players or when they get players in, and so many come through are Christians. So the fact that they're saying they're looking for good people
Yes.
as well as good players,
Yes.
they seem to be Christians.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible testimony, really, when you think of that. So we've had a lot of lone players that have come in that have been Christians, and we have a group that pray before games, and it's incredible. It's something that you won't see in changing rooms in this country, really. But God has just done an incredible work through the changing room and through the club, because the club have had a really big rise the last couple of years in terms of their league position and where they're punching to. Stuart, can I just pop to the toilet for 1 minute?
Of course, mate.
Is
Of
that all
course.
right?
Absolutely.
I'll be back.
Absolutely.
I'll be back.
No problem
I'll
at all.
literally be back in 1 minute. I really will.
No problem, mate. No problem. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Good interlude. A good interlude. Yeah. Well, guys, this is absolutely fantastic story. I'm really enjoying it. I'm like, I don't know if I just zone out. I'm like looking at Jason with awe and taking in, lapping up every nugget of information he's giving right now. Really enjoying it. It's a good opportunity to say that if you are listening, I'm going to just remove him while he's there. If you're watching on YouTube, it'd be a great time to subscribe and like the video down below. Our goal is just to be able to have facilitate conversation with people that are real examples of their faith in their day-to-day. And this is why I've been able to reach out to Jason. He's such a great example of that, and I hope you can hear that. I'm sure you can hear that through his story. It's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, and also, of course, available on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find that's called When Two or More with the McCaws. So get involved via that, whichever way you prefer to listen to this. I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation. It's going really well. But yeah, I think he's back. So let's get back into it. He's back. Thank you, mate.
Thank you, Stuart. I've never had to do that before on a podcast or Zoom, but I really had to go.
That's awesome, mate. I was just winging it, like rotating down the whole same thing.
You're a
natural.
That's
fantastic. Awesome. And were you with your? Oh no! In fact, one more. We were talking about Wycombe, weren't we? That's fantastic, and it's testament also to Alex. He went to, is it Ross County? He went to, yeah.
Yeah, he's up in Ross County now, and I miss him a lot. If I'm being honest, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's so much easier to share and to just to grow in twos, and especially when you're in an environment where it's not necessarily Christian based. It's great to have a brother with you in Christ that you can just walk with in it, and so I miss him a lot. There's obviously still Christians here, but I was on such a great wavelength with Alex, and I miss him.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. But what I also hear, and I'm sure other people hear, is you talk about the Wycombe group being started by him, but what you've carried on, Jason. I want to really honour that, because you've obviously, taken the baton from Alex and been able to carry that forward. So I just want to honour your place within that group, and It sounds like iron is sharpening iron in Wycombe, from a behind the scenes cultural perspective, and if that comes out on the pitch as well in your results and brings the team together, I think that's more to it. That's absolutely fantastic. I know that obviously Akinfenwa is a huge personality, and I'm sure iron sharpens iron is the right thing to say when it comes to both what you're talking about in from a faith perspective, but also being a defender in training against someone like Adebayo Akinfenwa. Have you got anything to say into that, mate?
I don't mark him. There's no point. That's what I've got to say. There's no point. If the ball's getting put into him, like, I don't even try and get anywhere near him because I don't really want to get barged to the floor. So B is an amazing guy. He's an incredible character. He's great at what he does, and people sometimes, because of the package he is, and sometimes not talk about his ability. He's an incredible player, and that deserves to be spoke about as well. So yeah, no, he's a great guy.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. You've got a group of you guys that are supporting each other. Obviously physically, but spiritually. That's incredible. And let's talk about your now wife and the story that comes about. Where did you meet her? Is that from Southampton again? And did she come through that journey with you?
No, so so when I had my encounter with the Lord, and so also just to sort of finish up on that too. So what basically happened is that I was in my car one day, and I was driving along, and I was listening to a gospel song that my friend had sent me, Ben, who was on that table with us. I heard God's voice. God spoke to me. He very clearly and plainly told me that he was proud of me and that he loved me. And it was incredible because I'd had people say that to me before, but it was a voice like I'd never heard before. It was audible. I heard it. It came over my right shoulder. My whole body just lit up with a warmth, is the best way I can explain it. And I knew that God had just spoke to me, and I knew that everything in my life was kind of leading up to that one moment, which sounds a bit crazy, but it was. And I just knew in that moment. I wouldn't say in that specific moment right there I was waiting to hear God, and I wanted to hear his voice, and I was crying out to him. He just spoke to me right there in that moment, and I just knew that he was real, and everything from that point would be for him. And
it's fantastic.
I had that encounter with him. I heard his voice. I believe we serve a God who is alive and who speaks to us and wants to speak to us. And yeah, I experienced that, but my wife wasn't best pleased. My wife was along with my family in the sense where they thought that from this, I'd lost my personality, which I'm actually taking as a bit of a compliment now, because I think, well, I'm a new creation in Christ, and I've been transformed, and that God has cut away some things that need to be cut away. So I'm pleased that people say that, and she wasn't happy about it. I remember she got up a big list on her phone of why it was a bad idea, and potentially, why she might be thinking about leaving our relationship, which was really hard for me to take. She was incredible. Like, always had been incredible to me, and the thought of losing her was scary, but the thought of losing God was even scarier. Like, I knew that what I'd encountered is truth, and I knew that if I was to pack this away and leave it, that the rest of my life would be a lie, really, which is crazy to sort of say, having just literally come to this realization. But I just knew, and I was willing to put anything on the line for it. God just had done that to me, and I think Zara saw that in me, but she knew that maybe before I was someone who maybe could be easily swayed, or someone who, she knew how much I love her. So for me to be saying, I understand what you're saying, but I can't turn away from this,
Mm.
and what I did is I said to her, listen, because at that point I was telling her everything and anything about God. And I was coming home and it was God, 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 everything.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
could, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot for her, I think, which it would
Mm.
be for anyone. And I understand that looking back now, the
Yeah.
way I was sharing and spoke to her. I
Yeah.
think I really God gave me wisdom, and I didn't stop speaking about God, but I just picked my
Mm.
times, and I respected how she felt, and I was just praying for her, and I was
Mm.
saying to God, I pray that she will see the fruit of what you're doing in me, and she started to. It took a lot. Well, it went a lot quicker than I thought it was going to. I thought this was going to be a long process, but it took a
Mm.
good few months. If we were in this place, and then she started asking questions. She started asking me about the Bible in particular.
Okay.
I think she was asking questions about the Bible to prove me wrong. I think she was asking questions about the Bible to try and catch me out.
Yeah.
Um, but I was a new believer. I still am really. I'm a new believer
Mm.
at this point. And I said to her, "Listen, I can't tell you everything. Like, I don't know everything. Why
Mm.
don't you read it yourself? Like, why don't
Mm.
you pick it up and read it yourself?"
Yeah.
And to start with, she was like, "No, no, 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 no." She kept asking these questions, and I said, "Look, I don't know. You should read it. You can download the app on your phone." And she's like, "What? You can get it on your phone?" And it's amazing,
Yeah.
really, what people
Nice.
think.
Mm.
You got to have this big book in front of you, and I really like reading leatherback, but
Mm.
I she's like, "No, you don't have to. Like, you can read it on your phone." So she started reading the Bible, and
Mm.
through reading it and trying, God started answering her questions, and she was kind of answering her own questions, and I could see something was going on. God was doing something within Zara, and yeah, I saw that something was starting to happen. So I was praying into it, and she had an incredible encounter with the Lord as well. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I'm just going to go back to your encounter for a second. First, the thing that stood out to me the most was how personal your encounter was. As in, it all. Of course, it is. It's personal when it feels like there's someone in your car whispering in your ear. But there's there's also this element of what I hear from you. I guess is this element of this belief that we were talking last week about the idea of happiness and putting faith in things and finding happiness in things. And actually, part of my testimony as well is that understanding who I was in the eyes of God, and in basically who I'm made new in, and who Jesus sees me to be, changes not just how I view myself, but how I view other people. And it sounds like you went through like a similar kind of situation where I'm putting faith and putting trust in all these things and trying to get happiness from all these things. And that's all you needed to hear was when you were on
Yeah,
your own, is that moment, that whisper in your ear. And that's why it stands out to me as being personal, because that's all you needed, which is fantastic.
yeah,
And when it comes to Zara, the reason I've asked about that is because her story is part of your testimony, and that's clear as day, isn't it? Actually, that must have been an eye-opening experience for you, mate, because through that you've had your faith strengthened to this is what God can do if we pray for people, if we pursue healthy, good conversation. And also, I think it's really good how you were like, yeah, go and read the word for yourself, because we know there's power in the word as well.
yeah. No, 100%. Zara's testimony is, I share it whenever I share mine, because it
Yeah,
has to go hand in hand, because
of course.
um I was going through massive questions and doubts, of when I came to the Lord, and that how is people going to come along this journey with me, who I love and who I'm
Mm.
going to be spending every day with. So
Yeah.
You know, what happened with Zara is incredible. And
Mm.
um, Zara, God told Zara, literally, I think it was a day after she got saved, Zara heard God say, thank Jason. And I remember when she told me that, I broke
Mm.
down and started crying because
Mm.
God was really showing me who He was. Like in
Yeah.
his early stages, He was
Yeah.
really showing me who He was. And like you said, that all we needed to hear,
Yeah.
like when God spoke them words to me, He was showing me who He was, is that He's proud of me and He
Mm.
loves me
Mm.
for for who I am in Him. And ultimately, He's a father. And before anything else, I'm a son. I'm a son of,
Mm.
and I'm a child of God. And
Mm.
that goes before any other football game. That goes before any other disappointment or tribulation in my life. Anything I go through is that ultimately God is proud of me. He loves me, and I'm a child of the Most High,
Mm.
and that's all that matters.
Mm. Mm. That's fantastic, mate. That's so good. So good to hear. So encouraging. You're using your platform for good, and that's why when I saw your stuff, and obviously saw your interview with Christian Taylor, I was like, I got to reach out to this guy. This guy's got a story, and I love that. And just hearing that throughout has been fantastic. Where would you be? In fact, I'm gonna go down. You obviously at one stage were the only person in your family that was a Christian. That must have been huge, especially in those moments you talked about when Zara saying, "Well, if you don't change, I might, I'm considering going elsewhere." How did you feel? Did you fit? You obviously felt that pressure, but did you nearly sway, or how did that go about? And what would you say to somebody that's in that situation, being the only Christian in their household now?
It's hard, no one. It's good. It's fair to say as well at this point, that
Mm.
I haven't seen any of my family members come to know the Lord yet. In
Mm.
terms of, I've seen my wife, um, and obviously that's changed the complete dynamic of, then we've had two kids, so our whole family has
Mm.
changed, but and how we are going to raise our children and how we are raising our children and stuff has
Yeah.
changed. But I haven't seen my mum, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, uncles, aunties. I haven't seen them get saved, so I know
Mm.
what it's still like to be in that environment
Okay.
where
Mm.
people are around who don't necessarily um, believe or have the same beliefs, and um, it it isn't easy. It's
Mm.
it's really hard. But all I can say is, all I can say this from being in this position myself, is that we have to trust God, and
Mm.
we have to use every opportunity we can to share about the
Mm.
Lord. But often, sometimes we won't share, and in them
Mm.
moments, don't feel condemned that you're not sharing,
Mm.
because I believe that God is using us all the time in every situation, even how we carry ourselves and how we react to certain situations, how we
Yeah.
speak. God is using us.
Mm.
So I believe that sometimes, fruit comes from a long period of time, and it
Mm.
takes a lot of pressing, and it takes a lot of time for for the harvest to come. And
Yeah.
I just trust God with my family. I trust God that they will know Him, and that ultimately, I pray and I hope He uses me. But I God can use anyone. God used a donkey, you
Mm.
know, to to speak to people. So God can use anyone.
Mm. Mm.
I just I trust God at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard. But in them moments, don't ever feel ashamed when you feel the Holy Spirit nudging you to share. Don't ever feel ashamed, because God can do incredible things in them
Yeah.
situations, and you don't know how people are going to react.
Yeah.
Um, and I always say sometimes as well, and I notice this in a dressing room environment too. Sometimes people might react a certain way in groups, but one-to-one are very, very different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think if you can have them conversations one-to-one as well with
Yeah.
family members and with them people, it can be really powerful. And you just find people in their need. You know, we all need Christ, and everyone needs help, and everyone needs hope, and it's just being available and being ready, I think, is
Yeah.
is the big thing.
It's really good, mate. Really good. You shared some real good wisdom there about just sometimes it's just even in the small stuff. I really like that point. I heard something recently that says sometimes being a Christian or being a good Christian, as it were, is just not being an idiot. As in, and I like that point. It wouldn't be language I'd use, but you know what I liked about it was that like we do take a lot of that responsibility into that kind of selfishness still comes into our Christian life sometimes, where it's like, oh, what can I do? What can I say? That the responsibility is fully on me, and that's not the case at all. You rightly said we have a job, an obligation to try and share, but also I think our prayer should be know when to speak, know when not to speak as well, because in those moments it's really important that everything that you say, everything you do, says its own message and has meaning, and I think it's just so valuable to know, to take that pressure off yourself and just be,
Yeah,
you know, consistent. And that's what I hear from you, mate, and that's fantastic. So encouraging to hear. That's
that's
brilliant.
cool. No, 100%, I agree.
And so with no, I'm going to put this to you. Where would you be, Jason, without Christ right now? Knowing, I asked that question because I think only you know who you were prior.
Yeah.
What would be, what distractions would have been in the way? What kind of life? I imagine with a football thing, there's the ego thing as well. Where would you be? Do you think?
Uh, I don't know. I don't want to know. Like,
Mm,
if I'm being honest, like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that I would be in I've obviously gone through a lot of harder times as well since what I've shared, and I
mm,
think, you know, especially in football, sometimes you can take it out on people, so you can
yeah,
damage relationships, and you can
mm,
often there can be sometimes a blame culture and pointing the finger at managers or pointing the finger at agents, or you know, I think maybe I would have had a lot more broken relationships,
yeah,
and I, you know, sometimes you know, it's hard to separate, you know, football and stuff like that. You can think it's your whole life. And I think
mm,
we used to go through them times in football when it's hard, I used to end up hating football and
yeah,
not enjoying the game at all. Whereas, you know, God's really taught me to, I can have joy in any circumstance, in anything that's going on.
mm,
Um, so I don't know whether my joy for football would be there without Christ. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and I just know the Lord has blessed me so much in terms of um, my family, in terms of my children, and yeah, I'm so grateful, and I've done life with God, and I've done life without God, and
mm.
you know, God wins every time.
That's fantastic. That's great. I think, yeah, you are right. I definitely don't want to drag you to a place that you're not, because that'd be unwise. But
No,
what I do hear from you is this sense of kind of appreciation of this is what God's done in me. Like this is where I am now. This is what I have to be thankful for, and that's just brilliant. It's so encouraging, and there may be people that are at that stage now that think, oh, maybe this is worth it. You know,
yeah,
maybe I should just knock at this door. And what would you say to people that are at that stage now that are maybe, you know, at they're Jason sat at that table, focusing on one conversation with their eyes, but listening to conversations like this with their ears that wouldn't declare they were listening to this conversation with their ears. What would you say to that person there and then?
well, I believe that God wants relationship with all of us. I
Mm,
believe that God isn't looking for us to be perfect. God isn't
mm,
looking for us to be ready to meet Him.
yeah,
Um, and he also understands that maybe we're not going to understand everything. I
Mm.
believe that God just wants relationship, and he wants us to know him.
Yeah.
And I would say that you have nothing to lose but everything to gain. You have
Mm.
everything to gain, and God can make all things new. And no matter where no matter where you're at in your
Mm.
situation, no
Mm.
matter where you're at in your life, whether you're in a good place, you think, or whether you're in a bad place, you think, God can meet you in that need. And all he wants to do is help us. All he wants to do is for us to be on his plan. And the Bible says his ways are higher
Mm.
and his thoughts are higher. And sometimes we have an idea of how we should live, or the Bible says
Mm.
there's a way that seems right to a man. You know,
Mm.
sometimes we have an idea of how we think things should go or how things should not go. And you know, my life is a really good testimony to the fact that on paper I have a great life, but I
Yeah.
wasn't happy. But I wasn't happy, and
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
only been fulfilled through Christ.
Mm.
So God can fulfill every need. God can fulfill every burden that you're feeling, and He wants to share with you in the victories as well. So I would say if you're on that fence, go
Mm.
for it. And you might, on the other side of it, just find the thing that you've always been looking for.
Mm. Mm. That's fantastic. Fantastic, mate. Thank you. And so, what does the future hold for you? I know, obviously, you're still at Wycombe, but you're still you have your career. You know, God willing to step into. Is Wycombe the place now that you would try and stay at for as long as you can, or are you open to the move, or you must be established church wise as well? How does that suit you? What do you?
Yeah, like I don't, I try not to look too far ahead, but I do
Mm.
believe that my career had been very choppy and changey. I've been moving
Mm.
every season, and God had actually been speaking to me about a place, you know, and He wanted me and my family to be settled, and I believe that, you know, well, God is really using me at this club. I believe that He has real purpose for me here. Like I
Mm.
said, I'm not trying to look too far ahead, but I feel like there's plenty of work still to be done here at Wycombe, and
Okay.
I really, really enjoy it here. If I'm being honest, I
Right.
love the club. I really enjoy the people I work with in terms of the staff and my teammates.
Mm.
And the fan base is great here. I have a really good connection with the fan base too.
Brilliant.
My family are really settled here and happy here. That being said, if God turned around tomorrow and said, I need you to move here or wherever,
Mm.
I would. But I love it here, and I can see myself being here for a long time. And you know, in terms of after my career, I'm open. You know, I'm really
Mm.
open. As you can gather, I love telling people about the Lord, and
Mm.
um, I would love to do that maybe a ministry, um,
Cool.
or in whatever that looks like to Him. I really, me and my wife have spoken about it a lot, and God has spoken to us a lot about maybe doing something together. It's funny, similar to what you and your partner are doing. But
Mm. Mm.
um, we would love to do something together, me and my wife. We don't know what that
Yeah.
looks like either, but um, yeah, we'll see. I'm really open. You know, I just want to do God's will, and I want to advance His kingdom. So whatever that looks like to Him,
That's
I'll be ready.
that's awesome. Well, your kind of willingness, your obedience is something that really stands out, and keep on, man. Fantastic. Keep going. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you're kind of an all or nothing type guy. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
But I feel
100%.
Yeah, but I feel like the way you do it is with such a humility and meekness that it's not goal guns blazing and whoa, I'm in too deep here. You do it so you're such a good communicator, and you communicate, and it feels like all that you're doing is with such a meekness and humility and authenticity. I've just been really touched by that, and I'm sure that will be the vibe that people pick up off you. And I think I don't doubt for 1 minute that you and Zara have a fantastic purpose ahead, and that God is really going to use your story in order to build you up for the kingdom,
You,
man.
man.
So that's fantastic.
Thank you, Stuart. I really appreciate that, man. I'm encouraged by you too.
Bless you, man. Thank you. Well, yeah, I think that's probably a great place to bring this to an end. Yeah, it's been a fantastic. Thanks for your vulnerability and authenticity and sharing your story. Yeah, and I see on social media, so you're happy to kind of share your faith. So definitely go and follow Jason if you're watching this podcast or listening to him, because he's using his platform well to share his football, which we all love, but also his story of faith along with that. So yeah, let me thank you again, and we'll just bring this to an end, Jason. So bless you, man. Thank you so much for sharing.
Awesome. Thank you, Stuart. God bless you, man.
No problem, guys. If you like what you've seen, please like down below. It's been great to talk to Jason today, and subscribe, like on YouTube, and yeah, we'll bring you the best in sharing our faith in our day to day more in the future. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye bye.